of She Rocks at College, and there is a trend that I'm noticing. There are more and more 8-week-long courses and classes popping up around campuses all around the US. And it can be really hard to keep up with these classes when you're getting the same amount of content, reading assignments, homework assignments, and exams that you would in a 16-week-long semester, except all of that is being crammed into 8 weeks and sometimes even 5 weeks if you're taking a summer course. In these classes, exams and quizzes are often scheduled weekly, sometimes even daily, which can cause you to be in a constant cramming and purging of content cycle. This kind of a study environment, though it's great if you're trying to get in a lot of courses in a short period of time, it affects your retention of information, which can cause trouble down the line, especially if you're in a program or a course that builds upon all of the information the more classes you take and as the semesters progress. And this is actually the situation that one of the girls that I've met named Courtney is experiencing. She's taking an accelerated nursing program that crams all of these semesters into 8 weeks. I want you to go ahead and listen to her describe what she's experiencing in her accelerated nursing course.
Hello, my name is Courtney Sipworth. I am 29 years old and I am currently a junior at Hampton University, majoring in nursing. I think my major problem is the fact that my program is so accelerated. I have tests every week, and my accelerated program, we have 2 sets of classes per 8 weeks. So instead of a full 16-week semester, we have 2 sets of 8-week semester. I find myself studying, learning the information that I need to learn, and then somewhat data dumping it so that I can know what I need to know for the next set of classes, which is difficult because nursing builds upon itself. So I am trying to find ways to effectively study, reduce the time that I'm studying and reading, but also retain the knowledge and be able to not only regurgitate it, but to actually understand it so that no matter how I'm asked a question, when I'm asked a question, I can effectively answer it no matter what platform it is, whether it's in-class, ATI, chapter tests, just in-class discussions. I would be successful in all arenas. So that is my situation. And most of the information that I'm looking at more so pertains to 16-week semesters where you have a lot more time to learn the information and make sure that you're retaining the information. And so since mine is a little bit sped up, I'm still working on trying to not only learn and understand, but also retain all of the information that I learned.
So if I were to summarize what Courtney is saying, she's expressing that she finds herself learning and forgetting information to be able to keep up with the pace of the information in exams. So she does something that she calls data dumping, which is hurting her because in subsequent courses, she's expected to have had a good understanding and foundation from the previous courses. But if she's in this constant cramming and data dumping cycle, that foundation isn't being built. And then the second thing that I hear her saying is that she does not have enough time to learn and retain the information because of the speed of the course. So when Courtney reached out to me, what I hear from her is that she has a couple of goals that she wants some help with. So she wants me to create a plan, give her some suggestions or tips on how to see success in this type of an accelerated 8-week course. So Courtney's goals are to, number 1, save time with reading and studying. The second goal is to study in a way where she retains all the information and truly understands it. And then the third goal that she has is she wants to stop the data dumping cycle. So let's help together Courtney create a plan that if she works it consistently, she applies it, she takes the advice that I give her, will help her see success in her classes and reach every single one of these 3 goals that we just covered. So the most important thing when it comes to these accelerated courses, if you don't take away anything else, is that you need to allocate time for them. Because of the fact that they are so fast-paced, you don't have time to procrastinate. Because if you miss a class, if you miss an assignment, if you procrastinate on your reading, it becomes especially difficult to catch up, because oftentimes the classes are meeting every single day or a couple of times a week for several hours in a day. It's a lot of content in a short period of time, so you can't afford to fall behind. So it's especially important that you, in your daily planner, whatever it is that you use to keep on top of how you manage your time, that you have a specific day, a specific time that you dedicate to staying on top of all your assignments in this class. In these classes, often students don't have extra time outside of the classes, so I always tell students that in these accelerated courses, lecture time becomes very important. It becomes your main source of where you're going to acquire the information that you're expected to know at the end of the 8 weeks. So you have to make the most out of lecture, which is going to require some preparation time before you ever step foot in a classroom. I want you to imagine if on the first day of class, your professor gave you a copy of the exam that you were going to get on Friday. You were allowed to look over it, but you weren't allowed to write down any of the questions or make a copy of it or take it with you. You were just allowed to look over it for about 15 minutes. Do you think having that information, having that exam, being able to look at it would change the way that you prepare for your test? Absolutely. I think across the board, every student would say that yes, it would change everything. You'd probably listen differently in lecture. Your ears would perk up every single time you heard the professor mention something that you saw was on one of the questions in that exam. You'd know what to write down in your notes and what to specifically focus on because you were able to see the questions, so you knew the content that they were going to be asking you questions on. You'd notice important concepts and how your professor words questions and how they think and compare and talk about the distinction between the different concepts, and you have an understanding of how your professor thinks and how they organize information. Now, the likelihood of that happening is slim to none. I know that some of you might be lucky enough to get practice exams from your professor that would give you that advantage, but most of the time across the board, that never happens. You're kind of on your own. But I'm going to show Courtney how she can create a pre-lecture cheat sheet that would act in the same way as if she was given a copy of the exam on day 1 to use for preparation for the test. The purpose of the pre-lecture cheat sheet is to narrow your focus when you're in lecture. It's designed to make sure that your notes have the key concepts, the key ideas, and the information that you're going to see show up on your exam. What a pre-lecture cheat sheet will do as well is that because you're more focused, because you know exactly what to listen for in lecture, you are able to understand the information a little bit better. So you're not going to have to rely on your textbook as heavily as if you didn't do this preparation beforehand, as if you didn't come to lecture with a guide as to what you should be writing down. So this is going to save Courtney some time when she's reading and when she's writing her notes, which was one of her goals. So a pre-lecture cheat sheet, all it is a list of questions that are tailored to the topic that your professor will be covering that day. Now you're thinking, okay, where do I pull the questions from? How do I know that the questions are the right questions, the questions that actually pertain to the information that not only the professor will be covering today, but the types of questions that I'll see him ask me on the exam. The thing that students don't understand is that professors don't go into teaching to try to trick students or hide things or keep things hush hush and secretive. They actually give you all the tools. They actually tell you what to expect. They tell you what's important to them, what the class is going to be covered right at the beginning. It's given to you in your course description, which I talked about in a previous video before. They give it to you in the syllabus, in the course outcomes, the course objectives, or the course goals. They give it to you in the objectives that are inside of the textbook. They give it to you in the objectives that are sometimes on the PowerPoint if your professor uses the PowerPoint. And sometimes they just verbally say it in class. We're going to be covering this, 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 and that, and how it relates to blank, 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 and blank. But when you don't prime yourself, right? When you don't do the prep work to have these types of things in mind prior to going to class, you're not attuned to it, right? So it becomes just a bunch of information coming at you and you're having to make sense of it while you're in lecture. But if you do that kind of work beforehand, then the lecture becomes a really rich experience that will take a lot of the hard work of having to read the textbook off the table. The goal of the pre-lecture cheat sheet is to prime your brain. To prime your brain to pay attention to the things that you're going to see on the exam. And the pre-lecture cheat sheet becomes your notes. So now you don't have to spend an additional 4 hours outside of the class reading the textbook trying to make sense of your notes or create new notes or create flashcards, because you already have questions and you already have the answers to those questions from the lecture content. This same pre-lecture cheat sheet then becomes a study tool for you to use when you're preparing to take the exam 3 to 5 days beforehand. When you're reviewing, what you're reviewing are those questions. You're asking yourself those questions and trying to see what you can recall from them. So you basically just cut down your study time and your reading time in half. But you can't miss lecture because you're going to be doing the prep work, and then the answers to those questions are going to come from the lecture. So you have to make sure that you show up for lecture. So the next goal that we're going to tackle that Courtney said she had was how to create a study plan that helps her retain information and stop data dumping. So we're covering the last 2 goals that she has. Now, I'm not going to go into detail on the whole neuroscience of how we learn and how the brain works. Just know and trust me when I say that there have been a lot of studies on how students learn best. There have been a lot of neuroscientists and psychologists that have, in a classroom environment, applied the tips, the tools, and the techniques that I'm going to be talking about here. If you don't trust me, in the description of this video, I'll put a list of the studies and some of those experts down below so that you can do your own research. But through these studies, the common theme has been that if you want information to move from your short-term memory into your long-term memory that you can recall at any given moment, regardless of how you're asked the information, you need to be doing something that is called spaced repetition, or spaced quiz and recall, or spaced testing yourself over several days. The first time that you learn something is the first time that you hear it. And the first time that you're often hearing the information is in lecture. So that's your first exposure of the information. Now, this is going to sound a little bit counterintuitive, but trust me, okay? If you want your retention of this material to stick, you have to allow time for your brain to forget it. It's called the forget to learn theory. And this theory holds that subconsciously, okay, so this is happening without us being aware of it, when we allow time for our brain to forget something that we just were exposed to, our brain filters out competing facts so that our brain can start making meaningful connections and removing anything that's going to confuse us. Forgetting also allows the next time that you see that information, or the next time that you review it or try to recall it, for that exposure to be deeper, to be solidified. And if you think about it, it kind of works the same way that building muscle works. So when you're building muscle, you start breaking down the muscle, you tear it, you rip it apart, and then you allow time for rest. During that rest period, your body is busy rebuilding, making the muscles stronger and bigger. It's the same way that forgetting aids in helping you to remember things. So the next time that you go to the gym, you're able to lift a little heavier, because now your muscles are able to handle that, because it's done the preparation, it's done the rest period. And that's the same way that the brain works. The next time that you go and review the information, it gets solidified, the connections in your brain become stronger, and it's easier for you to recall it. So let's get a little bit more specific, because I actually want to show you what spaced repetition or spaced quizzing or spaced testing would look like on a daily and weekly basis, so that you know how to set this up in your schedule and for your study periods as you're going through your 8-week or 5-week course. So let's pretend that you have classes on Mondays and Wednesdays for 3 to 4 hours at a time during this 8-week period, and then you have labs or clinicals or whatever on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So what I would suggest to set up this spaced repetition, this spaced retrieval, this spaced quiz and recall is Monday would be the first day of lecture. So Monday you would be exposed to the information, you would show up to lecture with your pre-lecture cheat sheet with all the questions, you would listen and answer the questions, and then you wouldn't do anything after lecture. You would kind of go home, go about your daily routine, take care of the kids if you're a mom, go to work if you're a student who works while you're in college, go to clubs if you're a student who lives on campus or whatever. You go about your daily life. On Wednesday, so you're leaving a day in between, you're going to test yourself and review the content that you learned on Monday. And you're going to do that either before lecture or you can do it after lecture. So then while you're in lecture on Wednesday, you're obviously going to get new information. So again, you're going to leave a day in between. So you're not going to review that information on Thursday, but instead you're actually going to review the information from Wednesday's class on Friday. Okay, so Monday stuff you review and quiz and test yourself on Wednesday. Wednesday stuff you review and test yourself on Friday. And then on Sunday, you review both Monday and Wednesday stuff. And when I say review, what I'm saying is quizzing, testing yourself, doing NCLEX style questions in the case of Courtney because she's in a nursing program, doing the end of chapter quizzes, testing yourself with a study buddy, talking about the information out loud, trying to write down everything that you can remember, trying to solve math problems if you're taking a math test, okay? So that's what I mean when you're reviewing. And as you're doing that, you're going to start realizing that there are certain things, certain topics, certain concepts, certain problems that you struggle with, that you're not that great on. And that's great. When you're able to pinpoint those things, that's incredible, because what you're going to do every single time that happens is you're going to review that information. You're going to relearn it. You're going to reteach it to yourself. You're going to ask questions in tutoring. You're going to look up a video online, because that second and third exposure, because of the time frame that you left in between, is going to help solidify the connections in your brain for retaining, understanding, and really grasping that content, so that no matter what question the professor throws at you, you're able to handle it. So let's say that it's Wednesday and it's time for you to review Monday's content. What you're going to do is for 20 minutes to 40 minutes, you're going to go through and just ask yourself questions. You're going to go through and try to answer problem sets. You're going to go through and try to talk about the information. You're going to go through it and test to see what it is that you know. Then for another hour to hour and a half, you're going to focus in on reviewing the things that you got wrong, reviewing the things that you were like, oh crap, I don't really understand how that works, or I remember him talking about that, but in my notes now I feel like I don't really understand it. So you go and you either reach out to the professor to teach it to you again, reach out for a video online, talk to a friend about it, go read it in the book. This is when now you use your book as a tool instead of your main source of content. So you go to the book and maybe read that section to try to understand it. And this whole process really shouldn't take you any more than 2 to 4 hours during that study period on that given day, because you're learning the information in lecture. That's why it's important that you do the pre-work. You create that pre-lecture cheat sheet. You're paying attention in lecture. And then when you're studying, what you're doing is seeing what you know and what you don't know, and going back and relearning, trying to make sense of the things that you realize that you didn't know. It should be fast, no more than 2 to 4 hours this process should take. And on a normal day for most of my students, they're able to get this done in 2 hours. I was able to get this done in 2 hours when I was a nursing student. And that's how I would set it up. That's how I would approach a 5 to 8 week long class. And that's the approach that I gave to Courtney. Now, I know a lot of the information that you're seeing out there teaching you how to study refer to longer 16-week long courses, but this is how you can approach an 8-week long course. You might be studying every single day or preparing every single day, but you're not spending all day doing this. The pre-lecture cheat sheet that you're creating shouldn't take you any more than half an hour to 40 minutes to create. When you're doing space, quiz, and recall, you're doing it for 20 to 40 minutes. What takes more time is when you're going to relearn things that you realize that you didn't really understand. That's what takes more time, because you're spending brain power and time reading and understanding or watching videos or whatever it is. But the actual studying part is quick, because studying is figuring out what you still don't know, and that's done through quiz and recall. So that's my video for today. I know that this was a bit longer than usual, but if you have any questions, do not hesitate to leave them below in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them. And that's it. I hope that you enjoyed the video. And as always, if you want more one-on-one attention, what you want to do is either schedule a complimentary 20-minute call with me, which the link for that will be down below, or join the Secret Study Society. It's a private Facebook group where there are over now 200 students that are in it, who are engaging with each other, asking questions, posting their syllabus, posting their readings, and getting direct feedback from me on how to create study plans, how to write their notes, and how to study for that particular class. So come on and join us if you are struggling as a student. As always, thank you so much for watching. Bye.